We are live. Hi, folks. I'm excited to do office hours with you. We're an hour later than usual today. Apologize for that. Yeah, we're here. We're starting. So let me share my screen here and we can talk about what's going down. And I'm just going to grab that and stick that in the Discord. This is where you can ask your questions and I will give my answers. And yeah, you can find how to join the Discord and everything at kenzydons.com/office hours. And all of the information is right there. If you are in the Zoom call, then you get first pickings at getting your questions answered. So we do have a handful of people in here and I'm going to stop talking. Anybody in Zoom have a question that they want answered? Okay, I see that Justin's here. Justin just posted this to the Discord, so I'll grab Justin's question first.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. So, yeah, I want to talk about React versus Angular. You have a team of 10 developers, varying areas of expertise, mostly backend and front end is deciding between the two. Roughly 5 years of experience with React, 0 with Angular, so I'm biased. No one on my team has any significant modern Angular experience, though the boss prefers Angular based on experience with both from a few years ago. React currently holds a developer mindshare according to my sphere of influence and State of JS survey. Anyway, so here are, so there are probably more libraries, integrations, and content available, but obviously most popular choice is always the right one, and React isn't perfect, I guess. Okay, so obviously I'm super biased as well. I'm literally wearing a shirt that has the React logo on it right now. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. I used Angular 1 years ago. And I was really deep into it. I contributed to the Angular injector. I spent more time in debugging the Angular compiler than I care to admit. So Angular JS was definitely, I have had a lot of experience with that. And I haven't used any other framework other than React since then to any degree of significance. So I played around with Vue and Svelte and all that. But yeah, so I'm certainly super biased. But here's the way that I think about it. You're absolutely right. React holds the developer mindshare. We can't really track how many developers use a particular framework. There's like that's not possible to do. But we do have some metrics. Download numbers are not reliable at all because we've got npm proxies and caches and stuff like that, and there's CI and different things like that. So that's not a reliable metric. But I think a pretty reliable metric is the number of browser extension installs. By the way, if you hear like construction noises, it's because I'm getting a roof replacement. We're doing solar and batteries and stuff, and people are working on my house. That's why I was late today, because I had to get a table removed so they could put our batteries where that table is. So anyway, the extension installs is a pretty good proxy for any metric that we could have because it's an indicative of how many people are using the framework. So, or it's the best metric we have. So based on that metric, React is more popular than all of the other frameworks combined. So it is twice as popular as the next most popular framework. And that next most popular is not Angular. In fact, by that metric, Angular is tiny compared to React and compared to Vue. Vue is the next most popular. So so if you're concerned about, as you mentioned here, if you're concerned about libraries, integrations, and content, then React is the obvious choice for that. The other aspect to keep in mind is that the other frameworks have blessed versions of different things. So they have animation libraries, and they have routers, and they have state management libraries, and official server-side rendering frameworks and stuff like that. And so at first glance, it could be like, well, yeah, that'll be sweet. We don't have to decide which of all these things to use. And yes, that is true. You don't have to decide. But in my mind, and and this is like where we get into very subjective things and where you have to kind of just make your own decision. But the way that I see it is because the React framework itself, or library, however you want to call it, because it makes the decision to just focus on the core of the framework, what it does, rather than adding in animations and different things, that leaves those problems to be solved by the greater community. And there are a lot of really smart people in the community who go and solve these problems in various different ways. And the side effect of that is we have lots of different solutions to these problems that then you have to decide which solution to follow. But if one of those solutions doesn't work for you, you have another one you can go try, and you can do different things, or you can just build your own. And so actually, the way that I see this, I have never thought about it this way before, but it's kind of like if you're at a company where you are like you're building a front end and you've got a team of back end engineers, and they build the back end specifically just for you, then they'll do like various things that work well for your use case. And then they, well, I haven't really thought this analogy through. So if it doesn't make sense, I'm sorry, but let me say this differently. I worked at a company once where the API that I used was an external API to our company. So our engineers built an API that was external to us. And it was really quite nice because it, well, you know what, yeah, this analogy doesn't work. Never mind. Erase all of the last like 2 minutes of what we're talking about. Okay, so the nice thing about React focusing on just the core of what React does well is it means that they can make that really, really good, and it forces them to support use cases that are outside of whatever extra solutions they build. So where if they said, okay, well, we're going to have a router and we're going to build things in the core that work really nicely with this router. Well, now if you try to build your own router, you maybe you can work with the things that they built, especially for their router, but maybe you can't. And so because React is saying, hey, no, we're just going to do this core thing well, we need to make sure that that has a really, really nice API for everybody else to use. That's kind of what I was talking about with that. But because I worked at a company where the API I was using was customer facing, they had to just make it really nice. And it was really nice as me, as an internal developer, to be able to use that external API, because they just had to make it work really, really well. So anyway, and the other thing is, if you're working with a framework that has everything built in, then if that built-in thing doesn't work for you, then you're less likely to go make your own version because it has something built in. So you must be doing something wrong. And so you're also less likely to contribute back to it because like the really super smart framework engineers are the ones who are working on it. So obviously I'm the one at fault here. I need to do something differently. And you end up working around that problem. And so therefore you have less innovation because there are fewer people working on solving these problems. So that's the way that I see it. That may or may not be the way that it actually is. But that is not exactly addressing your question, Justin. You're just wondering, like, which should we go with, React or Angular? And so the thing that I love about React is that I think that it is simple. And by simple, I mean that the concepts, the foundational concepts of React are simple, easy to understand. You can get a pretty good idea of how things work with a bit of study. Most people don't do that study. Most people are rapidly trying to just build something and move on with life. And that's fine if that's what you're trying to do. But if you circle back around and you take some time to really study and understand how React works, and it doesn't take a lot of time to do this, but if you're go back to the fundamentals of how this works, then you see that it is actually quite simple. And you can build, it's easier to build a simple application with a simple framework than it is to build a simple application with a complex one. And I see that Angular in particular is not a simple framework. Of course, that's my opinion, but that's the way that I feel about it. It's very complex. There are a lot of different pieces that interoperate in complex ways. It's complected. If you are familiar with the simple made easy or simplicity matters talk from Rich Hickey. So there are a lot of pieces that are just kind of mixed up, a lot of concepts that are mixed up together in Angular. And you can absolutely do the same thing with React. You could build a complex application with a simple framework. That is a thing you can do. But what I'm saying is, if you have a simple foundation, then it's easier to build a simple application. Now, like I said, a lot of people will disagree with that. I'm sure there are people using Svelte that are just like, the Svelte is just amazing and it's awesome and templates are great and whatever. That's another thing is when I moved on from AngularJS to React, one of the things I really resented was the amount of hours, many hours that I spent getting really, really good at Angular templates that did nothing for my career and my knowledge as a developer. I had to just throw away all of my knowledge of Angular templates and how filters worked. And I could still explain those things to you, but I cannot use that knowledge anywhere else. And that is really frustrating to me. The thing I love about React is the better I get at React, the better I get at JavaScript and vice versa. And considering that most of your engineers have primarily back-end experience than the front end, focusing on React will give them, will make them better at JavaScript, which is a good thing. Angular originally, AngularJS was created so that designers wouldn't have to need to know how to code to be able to build a user interface, a usable user interface. Miško Evry stated that as its original creation goal. That's why he built it. Now it's evolved beyond that, but you can still kind of see that in the template domain specific language of Angular, and everybody else uses a DSL. Whereas React uses a simple syntax sugar that compiles directly to JavaScript in a very easy to understand way, or an easy to learn. Like you can learn how the entire JSX, how that compiles to regular JavaScript function calls in less than an hour. So good luck doing that with a template DSL. You spend forever trying to figure out how this works, and the errors that you get are more confusing because they have to build all of that themselves. And so, yeah, I really like that React just has this tiny little syntax sugar on top of JavaScript that's easily, you can compile it in your brain and see what the JavaScript is. So the better that you get at JavaScript, the better you'll get at React and vice versa. So that's another thing going for it that I really appreciate about React. Now, I did have a little bit of experience with Angular 2 before I went to React. I gave some conference talks about it. And actually, when the week after I gave the conference talk, they changed things drastically from what I talked about. Those were the fun early days of pre-Angular 2 releases. Whew, that was interesting. But I was really excited about Angular 2 because I had identified a lot of pain points of AngularJS, and the module system and global namespaces and stuff like that were really, really frustrating. And so I was like, sweet, we've got real JavaScript modules they're going to start using and all of these things. And then and when they first announced Angular 2, they were getting rid of all of this stuff that wasn't good. And then slowly, as they developed Angular 2, they started adding all of those things back. They have their module system again, and they got you have to list your dependents, your directive dependencies and stuff. And maybe some of these things have changed, but I don't think so. And that was really frustrating to me that they figured they couldn't make it work without all of that additional complexity. So I was, like I said, I don't have real experience with Angular 2 and beyond. But from what I saw before I left the Angular community and went to React, they weren't changing any, the things that really bothered me about Angular, they weren't changing those things. So yeah, I mean, Justin, you're asking me, I have a very obvious bias toward React, but it's not out of nothing. I have the opinions that I have based on some experience. And so, Yeah, and I guess like full disclosure, the more people who use React, the more money I make, right? So like if we want to get transparent there, I guess. So yeah, you can take that for what it is. I'm not just telling you this because I think you're gonna buy my course or something. I don't care.
Epic Angular.dev coming soon.
Yeah, right. That'll never happen. Honestly, a React Native.dev would come sooner, and that will not happen either, because I just don't do React Native. So like I only create stuff on stuff that I do, and I'm never gonna use Angular. That just won't happen. So yeah, and I guess that's my little spiel. So it's kind of long. So
Thanks.
yeah, hopefully it sort of helps. It's going to be hard since your boss has a preference already, to convince them. Yeah, like this may or may not help, but I do have a blog post about, let's see, alignment. Yeah, here it is, business and engineering alignment. So that might help. Here, we can do a thread. Whoa. Can I just create it without a, oh man, thread. I don't know. Never mind. No threads. Threads are for like discussion. So we'll do a reply. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. Sweet. Yeah. Hopefully that like sort of helps. Oh shoot. I just closed Discord. There we go. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Hi, James. Go ahead. I'm done with that last one. So hopefully that helped, Justin.
Can I share my screen to explain the problem?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you please allow? Oh, okay. So actually, I have 3 questions, but
Sure.
I will ask it really quick. This is your testing library course material, and I cannot understand why we need to re-render the BOM here without any error, since the user clicks the try again button, and this has error state is changing to true, and I think we don't need this re-render, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I remember writing this code. Let me think about it for a second so I can remember why we need to do that. So let's see. So we render the error boundary. So the state is initialized and has error of false. Then we re-render. We say the BOM should throw. That's going to trigger the component did catch. I don't know. Can I like, well, yeah, you're highlighting it perfectly. Thank you. So that'll do the component did catch. We'll set the error to true. That'll trigger a render, and then we'll render the try again button. And then we make assertions on all of the errors that are logged and stuff. And then if we don't re-render, so we'll pretend we don't have that re-render again, the user is going to click the try again text. That will trigger the try again callback to get called. We say has error is false. Oh, I remember now. So the reason that we have to re-render is if we click try again, has error is going to get set to false. So we'll re-render, and that means we'll render the props.children. But remember, the last time we rendered the children, the BOM had should throw is true. And so the reason we re-render is so that we can update the BOM to not throw the next time it renders. Does that make sense? Do you want to show the BOM code as well so folks know what we're talking about with that?
But if we if user clicks try again button, then I think this props.children has to be rendered, but I don't know why.
Yeah, so this props.children, this props.children is going to have is going to be the BOM component, and it's going to have a prop that is should throw as true.
Oh, I understood.
So we need to re-render to update the BOM to not have should throw as true.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, while you're still sharing, do you mind showing the BOM code just so folks who are watching can see what that is?
Sure.
I think if you scroll up, yeah, it's just right there on line 22. So yeah, when we have the should throw prop, we just throw an error, and so we need to change that to false before we try again. And that's kind of that should make sense, right? So let's say that you're rendering some user information, and there's a we pass it a user, but their avatar is, or their name property is null. And so when we try to access the first off of that name property, it's going to throw an error and we catch. If the user hits try again, then it's just going to try and re-render that with the same user object that has the null as the name property. And so that's just going to throw the error again. And so what you want to do with an error boundary, and we actually do this with React error boundary, is you want to have some mechanism for resetting the state or resetting the prompts that you're passing so that the same error doesn't reoccur. And so as you continue through the core, well, you're in testing, or are you in Epic React, or is this testing library? Yeah, I think this is testing JavaScript, right?
This is testing, and I'm attending both.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I can't remember if in testing library I ever show you React error boundary. Yeah. Actually, look. Do you remember seeing that, James? Do I show you React error boundary?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, I thought I did. Yeah. So in I can't remember whether or not I show you this. I can't remember where I show you things. There are lots of things I show you, but with React error boundary, there is a prop that's on reset or reset keys.
Reset and keys are in the Epic React Dev.
Yeah. Yep. So that prop allows you to say, hey, when the user wants to try again, let me know so that I can update things so the error is not going to just happen again. So like I clear out the user so there is no user and they have to re-request a new one or something like that. So anyway, that's why. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, sure thing.
Second question is that I've read your article, and it is recommended to place just one single assertion on the wait for, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But I'm curious how this second assertion can be executed before without waiting this first assertion.
So are you showing me something on screen? I'm only seeing the error boundary stuff.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. I think you just shared the one app. There it is. Yeah. Okay. So you're wondering how does that assertion on line 9 get run?
Before without waiting to this line 8 to be completed.
So it doesn't. It waits for that first line to be completed before running the next one because of the await syntax there on line 8.
But the reason why we separate this assertion from the first wait, this wait for utility, is because we can save the development time if this assertion fails, but we don't have to wait this to be
right.
completed.
Okay. Yeah, I understand your question now. So let's imagine a scenario where window.fetch, which by the way, I should probably update this example because you shouldn't be asserting on window.fetch. Just use MSW and then you don't need to worry about that. But the concept still stands. Let's say you have a function that gets called, you've mocked it, so you want to assert on it. And so let's imagine a scenario, we'll still use window.fetch, where this function is getting called multiple times on accident. It's supposed to be called just once, but it's getting called twice. And both times, or one time it's called with foo, the next time it's called with bar. So in the first example, what's going to happen is that first assertion on line 3 is going to pass just fine because it was called with foo. But on line 4, that assertion will not pass. It will fail because it was called twice, not just once. And so we're going to wait for another interval, and then we'll come back again and we'll check. Was it called with foo? Yes, it was, but it was called twice. So we'll do it again and again and again until it times out. If we go with the second example, then that first one is going to pass. And it's going to say, oh, sweet. Yep, it was called with foo. And then immediately thereafter, it will say, oh, no, it wasn't called once. It was actually called twice. And so we don't have to wait for the timeout. And that's the only difference.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah. And you said you had another one with acting.
Yeah, this is the last one.
Okay.
And I saw this video, and we have to wrap this result the current increment function with the act function, right?
That's right.
And I understand why we need to wrap this with act, because the state update is asynchronous, but I don't understand why this assertion itself is passing,
Oh,
because I
um,
think this one has to be 0, but this assertion is passing. So I'm curious why this is passing.
yeah. So the reason that is happening is because result.current is an object that gets mutated between state updates. So the way that that render hook works, and actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure I show this in testing JavaScript. And if not, I definitely show it in the testing workshop of Epic React, where we work on testing a custom hook. I think it's the last or second to last exercise on Epic React, the testing workshop. And we basically we build render hook in that exercise. And so when you go through that, if you haven't already, you'll see that we start out by just having variables that we mutate so that we can, or that we reassign, so we can make these assertions over time as things change. And then we move to an object that we mutate because we don't have access to those variables anymore. So we can't, so reassignment of those variables doesn't affect the user of our utility that we build. So yeah, what's happening is every time a state update happens, that render hook callback that you're passing there is going to get called, and whatever is returned from that will be assigned to result.current. And so that's why on that, there's no line number, but right after the increment, that count value gets updated to 1 because result.current is actually a completely different object at that point in time. Does that make sense?
But isn't that state updates is happening in the next event loop?
Oh, actually, state updates happen synchronously in React. Currently, with concurrent mode, all bets are off on whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. Well, and I shouldn't say concurrent mode, but with concurrent features. I should say all bets are off technically, but when you use act, that ensures that all state updates happen synchronously. And so because React Testing Library has all of its event interactions and all of those things are automatically wrapped in act, you won't ever have to worry about it. You can write all of your tests as if everything's synchronous, with the exception of like, I made an API call, and so now I need to wait for something or whatever. So that's when you use find by. But like, you can assume that React is operating synchronously because everything's wrapped in act, and act is responsible for saying, hey, I'm going to do something, and when I'm all done, I want you to flush everything out. And so like, just make everything happen right now. Don't wait for any concurrent nonsense. And so by wrapping this in act, it ensures that it's going to be synchronous. Now, the version of React that I'm running in that video, and the version of React that everybody's shipping right now, everything is synchronous. So when you do a state update, that state update will synchronously, by the end of that event loop, it will update or it will re-render the component. So React does do batching. So if you have like a couple updates in a event callback or something, you do a couple state updates, it doesn't synchronously run the state update at that time when you call set state or whatever, but by the end of the event loop, React kind of queues all of those things up, and then it will synchronously update React and synchronously update. Well, let's see. I don't know if it synchronously updates the DOM. I think it does after that re-render, and then there will be a period of time where it lets the browser do its thing, and then it will call your use effect callbacks. But that's another thing that act ensures, is that when you add act, it will not only make sure that all set states are finished and everything, even with concurrent mode, but it will also ensure that all of your use effects are called as well. And it just flushes all of that stuff to make it so that actually there are a couple of reasons that I kind of outline in that article why that happens that way.
So these two assertions can be passed without act, but it is better to add the act for the safety reason, right?
Yes, yeah. So for a couple of reasons. One, when you start using concurrent features, it may not actually synchronously update the state. And I don't think there's any way to know for sure whether it will or not. And sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't. Just kind of depends on what events happen and stuff. But yeah, so that's one reason to use act. And then the other is it could be that there are state updates happening that you don't know about or that you haven't planned for. And so that's another reason why the act warning comes in there. And then the other is you want to make sure that all of the side effects are flushed before you continue with your test, because the user isn't going to have any real experience between when the DOM is updated and when those effect callbacks are run. And so you want your test to resemble that same thing. Now, there could be an exception there for some situations, and that yeah, I've never run into anything in the real world with any of those exceptions, so I probably should just not mention it. But YouTube and Twitter love nuance, and so I'll just mention there could be exceptions. But yeah, it's always best to just wrap your state updates or the functions that you call that will update state in act. And that's why React Testing Library does it automatically. And then there are the three situations in this blog post that I outline of when you need to use it manually.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Thanks for those well-prepared questions, James. Any other questions in Zoom? Okay, sweet. Let me share my screen again, and we'll get to more questions in here. So let me see. I think I answered this one. Yeah, I remember answering this one. Okay, Oyenkun, hopefully I said that right, is asking, learning React for a while and building some applications, but I've not really seen resources where I can practice proper UI architecture if I don't want to use component library. Wait, I think I answered this one last time, actually. Whoops. Oh, scrolled up too far. Okay. Oh, and I remember reading that too. I was like, I'm pretty sure I remember reading his name before. Okay, here we go. I think this is a new one. Okay, so in the React performance code splitting exercise or extra credit 2, use Webpack magic comments for prefetching the globe component. Why are we using React Lazy to dynamically import it again after putting the component inside prefetch? When I click checkbox to load the globe, it will still show me a loading indicator and then load the chunk for the globe. What was the difference? Yeah, I think Sue actually answered this pretty well, but let me just see. Yeah, so I can actually demonstrate what Sue is talking about here. So if we go to React Performance, now if I normally autocompletes. So we go to code splitting, and if we look at the extra credit, I think that last extra credit is the one with the Webpack true. So we just add this to our dynamic import here because we're using Webpack in this project. In Remix, you do this totally differently, and it's way better. But yeah, this is what we have to work with. So actually, let me open this on an isolated page. And we will clear this out, empty cache and hard reload, and take a look at the things that happen before I interact with the app at all. So we'll see that we get and because the workshop works the way that it is, there are a couple of files that show up here. But we have, this is our document request. So this just gets the page. And you'll notice that all of these other scripts are coming from 0.1 extra, so on and so forth. And then of course we have the React Dev Tools. I hate that. I wish there was a way to filter that out of, like filter all Chrome extensions out of my network tab. And yeah, so one of these is actually the globe that will show up. And if we look at our elements over here, we'll see we have a prefetch. In fact, we have two prefetches. I think, I'm not sure which one of these is going to be the one we're looking for. But anyway, if I clear, well, let's just remember the manifest JSON. If I click show globe, then you'll see that loading shows up for a second. And then we'll see, oh, you know what? I disabled the cache. That's why that didn't work out. So we do get a couple of other chunks in here. Let's not disable the cache. We'll do that again. And then if I click this, then we'll see we have these two things are coming from the prefetch cache. So that's what's happening. Users don't normally have the cache disabled. So we are making a network call to get it. But because Webpack stuck this this link tag with the prefetch right here, the browser's like, oh, okay, so you're going to need that soon. Let me, when I'm not busy, I'll go get that code over the network and stick it in my cache. And then the next time you request it, like you would normally request something, I'm going to, as usual, I'm going to check my cache and see if it's in there. And if it is, then I can return it in 8 milliseconds, as opposed to the 71 milliseconds or 69 milliseconds that I had earlier. Now, this maybe that's not a huge benefit for what you're trying to do, or maybe it is. And it kind of comes down to what you're really going for. But actually, I'll give you an example from my website. Whoops. Which will be really fast when it's shipped to production. But right now it is, we're still optimizing stuff, like this image is way too big, stuff like that. But if you look at the elements here, I've got a bunch of preloads for the font, because I was sick and tired of the font like taking a second to load and then showing up and shifting stuff around. So I got some preloads for the font. I'm configuring that myself with Remix. It's really easy to do that sort of thing with Remix. I love it. And then Remix does this for me automatically. It adds all of these link tags for module preload. And because they do that, if I refresh again, so and I have the cache disabled, or not disabled, I should say. Because they do that, the waterfall for these is just straight down. Normally, and keep in mind, Remix ships native ES modules. So like it's using actual ES modules. So what normally happens when you ship native ES modules is it says, oh, you want this module, let me go get it. And it brings it back, and then it parses it, and it sees, oh, you've got a bunch of other imports in here. So, okay, let me go get all of those. And it brings all of those back, and it parses that. And then it says, oh, you've got a bunch of, like, each one of those has their own module. So it's going back and forth. And what you'll see is a waterfall that just goes down into the right, right here. And so because Remix is your bundler, it uses ESBuild in the hood. It knows all the modules, all the chunks that you're going to need. It automatically adds all of these module preload links right here, so that the waterfall can just be straight down. It can go get all of those things all at once over the HTTP2 multiplexing nonsense that some people, Jacob knows what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so it just goes and gets all that stuff really quickly, and all at the same time. And so it can all be loaded really quick, and it's great. Yeah. So anyway, being able to load something over the wire, I mean, this is like a 10% faster, or it takes 10% of the time as it usually would to load that globe. So that's a big deal. Like this has got or is it D3? I can't remember what we have in this globe. Originally, it was just like a little vanilla tilt library that would like tilt around and stuff as you moused over it. And we used that for a different exercise, but that library wasn't big enough to show any difference here. So I was like, we need something like for real. And so the folks at Egghead made me this, and I was like, that's cool. Thank you, Egghead. You're awesome. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question on like what this is actually doing, what value this offers, and why Remix is amazing, because it makes doing, you don't have the magic comment, you have something different. It's this links export. It's this function called links and you just say what you want, and you can put anything. So I just did the preload for my fonts. It took like a minute to do that. It was really easy. And what's cool is you can do it like on a per route basis too. It's really awesome. Man, I just love it. Anyway, fun stuff. Hopefully that answers your question. Good luck. And let's see, just answered on the stream. Okay, coming back here, right here. All right, how did I become so good at React? Oh, well, that's nice. That comes with the assertion that I am. So appreciate that compliment. Is there any, is it the documentation, practice, and teaching? Yeah, so I've got lots of thoughts on this. So let's see, I've written stuff that I have lots of thoughts on. I typically have a blog post about too. And so this one would be solidifying what you learn is one that would help. Also, how I teach, probably. Maybe, sort of. I feel like there's another one in here though. Let's see, maybe career. Yeah, how to get experience. That's a good one. Yeah, I think, I mean, these two might be useful as well. Yeah, hopefully those help. But basically, yeah, I think probably the one that'll be most helpful is how to get experience as a software engineer. And you get experience by having experiences. And you have experiences, and it's good to have the right kinds of experiences. So you want experience in the thing that is going to help you learn what it is that you want to learn. So oh shoot, hold on a second. Oh yeah, we're good. Sorry, I thought somebody was at the door. And my wife is not home right now, so I am alone. So what I have done is I decided, okay, I'm going to be really good at JavaScript. I'm going to be really good at React. And I'm not going to ignore everything else. So I still like get newsletters and listen to podcasts about like more things. And I've spent more time than I care to tell you about on like DevOps stuff in setting up my website. That has not been, I mean, it's kind of interesting and it's really cool when it's done, but I don't enjoy doing that stuff. But I focus my time and attention on the stuff I want to get really good at. And I pick what I want to get really good at. I'm not, some people are really successful polyglot programmers. That's not what I am. I don't want to do that. I want to be really good at something specific. And so I take the tickets that are that will help me get better at whatever it is that I'm trying to get better at, and I work on side projects that will help me get better at that as well. So oh, you know what, there's one other thing, let me find it. I have a talk called 0 to 60 in software development, how to jumpstart your career. Let me find that for you. Or actually, I already got a reply. We'll just, wow, my computer is not happy right now. Man, what is going on? No, I pasted something. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so that talk should help as well. Basically, there are 3 steps to learning, and they are consume, build, then teach. So you consume as much stuff as you can from podcasts and newsletters and whatever it is. And then and even Twitter or Discord. And then you build stuff based on the things that you have consumed. So like consuming opens your mind to what's possible. What other people have done, gives you some exposure to different approaches to things. And then you build stuff based on what you've consumed. And then you solidify what you learn by teaching the things that you've learned by through the process of building. And that has been my secret. I give tons of workshops on this stuff. I've gotten every question that you can imagine on different things on React. And so I learned a lot through that process. And by preparing the content that I'm going to deliver and teach, it forces me to learn things even better and get a better understanding so I can explain it correctly and so I don't get things wrong. So that's my secret. Thank you for your kind words. I hope that helps. Good luck. Vasilis, hopefully I said your name right. Do you use any React form library, or do you recommend any of them? All right, I actually have been asked this question a number of times on Office Hours, so it's a pretty hot topic. And I'll just say what I've always said. I've heard I have technically used Formic at the bottom of my site. This is powered by Formic, but I actually didn't build that. That was somebody else built that for me. And so, I don't have real experience with Formic. I'm not like unhappy with it, I guess. I haven't had to do too much with it. React Hook Form, I've heard really good things about it from people who have used Formic and React Hook Form, and they seem to prefer React Hook Form. I have never built forms that were so complicated that I felt like I needed a forms library. So every form that I've ever built, I use a regular form, just the form tag and inputs and labels, and that's it. I've never felt like I needed to reach for a library. And I haven't built like big wizards and all of that weirdness. But I don't know, I've built some forms that had a half dozen inputs on it and steps. Like at PayPal, we had when you wanted to do like what's cross-country or cross-border transaction. So like send money to a friend in a different country. You went through the flow that I helped build, that you chose your country, and then you chose your how much you wanted to send them, or you could choose how much you wanted them to receive based on the currency stuff, and it would show you the fees and stuff, and then you choose who it was that you wanted to send to. Like there were a couple of fields in there, and we didn't use a forms library. We just used forms. Like the hard part are the elements within the form, like date pickers and drop downs and stuff like that. That's where downshift came from, was from that flow. So we had the drop down for the country selector, and then drop down for which user you wanted to send to, and then we had that. But then we also had sending domestic stuff, and we didn't need a country picker, but we had a user selector, and for some reason that was a different user selector. I don't remember why, like a context chooser or something. And so we had like 3 or 4 of these drop downs that were all different. And that's why I built downshift. I was like, these don't need to be different. Where's I can see that there's an abstraction in here somewhere, and I pulled it out, and that was downshift. And then all of those were using downshift then. And yeah, anyway, so I don't use a forms library. I just use forms. For add refs and handlers to them. Yeah, I just don't know. Like, I'm sure like they exist for a reason. I just haven't run into the problem that they solve, I guess. So, okay. Aziz Beck, are you on? Sorry, oh yeah, I see ya. Did you want to share your screen and correct my pronunciation of your name? If you're speaking, you're muted. I can see that you're muted. Okay, I'll let you get things set up or whatever it is that you're doing. Feel free to interrupt me when you're ready to show it on the live stream. Okay. Yeah, sure. And if you're getting help somewhere else, that's fine too. Silly question. There are no silly questions. There's actually, that's a common saying, like there's no such thing as a silly question. There's a comedy group that I really enjoy called Studio C. They have tons of videos on YouTube, millions and millions of views and stuff. But they have one sketch of like a teacher in a classroom, and she's there's somebody, she finishes a lecture And then somebody says, I have a stupid question. She's like, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And then like she proceeds to ask like a ridiculously stupid question. And then like a bunch of people ask like totally unrelated questions and stupid stuff. And she's like, there's no such thing as a silly question. And then somebody asks like a legit question. She's like, no, of course, that's a stupid question. That's the end. It's funny. Anyway, yeah, I doubt that this is a silly question. So compound components pattern. Does this pattern only apply to core components like those? I can't find an example where this pattern applies to any component that is of a unique business nature. For example, let's say you build a tweet component. I think something like this. We've got all those things. And that's just my mental model component pattern to visualize stuff. Imagine a person component. I really don't know if I should take this pattern to a large page component or something like that. The common question I have with this is, with this pattern, how do the parent components organize their children in the layout? Or does this pattern ignore this? I mean, for example, I reviewed some material UI and Chakra UI components, components that follow this pattern and use the mechanism of relative position and absolute position. The child components have their CSS where they must move within the parent's layout. This left me confused, and I wondered if CSS grid and its template areas would not be enough for each child component to know what area it should live in within the parent layout. That is a slot mechanism, but with CSS grid. Is there any open source application where I can see this pattern in action that does not apply to the usual components models? Yeah. Okay, actually, I have an article that will be applicable here on Epic React, and that is somewhat embarrassingly titled, One React Mistake That's Slowing You Down. It's like so clickbaity. I should probably retitle it, but it's too late now. Where I basically describe layout components and something that like people just don't do. We naturally decide to make these components that render other components that render others, but you could be a lot better off having these slots. So here's my left nav, here's my center, and here's my right, and you can like do that very easily. And it's basically what you're describing with these slots. A slot mechanism. But with CSS grid, you could actually apply CSS grid to this. You'd say my left nav is wrapped in a div that has the CSS grid areas and stuff like that applied to it, so that these just naturally apply or naturally get laid out to where they go. And so this is basically a layout component. I would not consider this a compound component. So what distinguishes a compound component isn't just that it's responsible for rendering the children where they should be. What a compound component is, let me think. The simplest definition of a set of compound components is they share state implicitly. That's all. So the parent component is responsible for setting up the state, probably in context, and then the other compound components, the children, will use that context to get access to the state. That's what a compound component or what compound components are. You have a parent that sets up state, and then children that access that state. And it's all done implicitly so that the users of the components don't have to worry about orchestrating that or connecting those things together. It's very much like the best example is the select element in HTML. The select by itself is useless because it's setting up the state for nobody. And then the option by itself is useless because it can't access that implicit state from anybody else. So that's why they're compound. Together, they make a whole. And so this is absolutely could be a compound component situation where the avatar gets access to the tweet that the tweet that it needs, and it knows like, okay, here's the user for the avatar I'm supposed to be displaying and all of that. So you could totally set up a compound component situation with a tweet like that. Person potentially also, it could access what the I don't know, like the length of the arm from the person object that this person configures. So and in both of these cases, the person isn't really responsible for the layout, and the tweet isn't responsible for the layout. And that's actually one of the benefits of compound components is the user can control the layout. So that there are two separate things. And actually in the future, I probably, in an update to Epic React, I probably will make this distinction and add a pattern. I'm going to make a note of this. Let me do that right now, because I don't want to forget this. Let me find my giant list of things I need to do in Epic React in the future. where it is. There it is. Layout component pattern. Where I'll basically have an exercise to do this. So we'll take something like this and we'll refactor it to this to demonstrate the benefits. So look forward to that at an Epic React future near you. It's a very important distinction. There are layout components and there are compound components. Layout components are responsible for taking in children or other elements as like with props. It's basically a slots and laying them out using CSS Grid or Flexbox or whatever it is, just putting them in the right place. That's what a layout component does. Compound components are different. They are responsible for the state side of things. So configuring state, and then they not only do they export the provider, but they also export the consumers as well, typically. Yeah, if you're not exporting the consumers, then what you're doing is not compound components. What you're doing is a provider pattern, which is what context is. So you're exporting a provider, and then you expect the users of your provider to consume that, and that's the provider pattern. I think I teach that in Epic React. I used to teach it all the time because we didn't have official context, and so I would show React Broadcast. Did I show React? I can't remember if I used React Broadcast, but that's what I would have used before context. I think that I actually just implemented context like the old way. I think that's what I did. Maybe. I can't remember now. It doesn't matter because we have context. Yeah, so there are those three patterns. One, you just export the provider and then expect consumers to consume it. Two, you export the provider and consumers so that that state sharing can be completely implicit. And then the layout is the choice of the user. Wherever they put these different components, they get to choose where things are laid out. And then three, you have a layout component that does nothing with state. It just puts things in the right place. Now, you can combine these in all three ways. So you can have a layout component that also has compound components that it's exporting. So it sets up some state, it exports some compound components, but and then you provide those values, and then it sets things as layout. You could also export the provider so that people can consume it themselves and not use your compound components. So you can mix and match as many as you want, but there are three distinct patterns that I think is the core to what your question was getting to, hopefully.
So, Kent, since they brought up Material UI as well, I'll mention that Material UI actually has examples of the pretty much at least two of them where you have the context do an implicit state. So like they actually now have the app bar and like the tabs component. There's an actual like tab list component that uses context to basically know which tab you're clicking on. And there's just an implicit state between those. All you do is pass in a value. So like it knows that these tabs are, which tab is connected to the state of the tab list. And then there's the grid component, which is like exactly what you're talking about when you say a layout component is you just pass in children and it basically just slots them into the very specific locations that you have defined for those grids.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the last bit of this question was, is there an open source application where you can see the pattern in action, not applied to just regular components? So I think what you're asking about is layout components. And I think Jacob kind of described that. So hopefully that answers the question. As far as like, business logic sort of things, I think like I try to give an example of this, but I don't have any code for you to look at. But this is kind of the example, like you draw lines around the different elements, and then we typically lay them out like this, but you could lay it out like this, and that's hopefully that's enough for you. And I don't think I linked to this, so let me do that really quick and move on to the next. Okay, sweet. So Azizbek, hopefully I'm saying your name right. Help me overcome frustration of testing an existing code base. I have a task in a company cover components in a running project. I'm facing a lot of problems. Oh, hi there. Are you there? Sorry, I thought I heard you say something. Okay. having a lot of problems. I cannot find correct answer and I'm really exhausted. I feel ya. It's exhausting searching and not finding an answer. And also it's not easy to ask others because the code base is more than medium size. So it gives to find an issue for others too. And I feel stressed these days because I can't find correct answers anywhere. I'm sorry. Man, that does not sound like fun. Just calm down. Everything will be okay. You're healthy, hopefully, and you've got what you need. We'll get through this together. It'll be all right. What would you suggest? Just give up and ask another team from PM or keep trying. Okay, so first on the subject of, I'll answer the easy question first. On the subject of adding testing to an existing code base, I have this blog post that will hopefully help give at least some direction. And yeah, as far as like not being able to find the correct answers to different things, it sounds like this is a really challenging problem for you. And because I don't understand enough about the context and it would take you too long to like contextualize me into this, I'm not going to be able to give you advice or advise you on what you should do. And so I'm not going to try. But I would say that if you're feeling a great amount of stress or exhaustion from your work, then you should talk with your boss about this and just let them know. Like you don't have to say, I want a new project. They need to know, they should know that you are, you feel overburdened. And maybe they can give you some additional resources or something. You know, it could be like, I don't know enough about you and your experience and the difficulty of the project. All I know is this one paragraph that you've given me. So I preface all of this by saying that just because I don't want you to take this and start feeling bad about yourself. But maybe it is that this is too big of a project for you. And so like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Like, because I don't want you to feel like you're incompetent or anything like that. I'm sure you're.
So Ken, I'm gonna jump in there with I inherited a full stack application at Cloudflare that had 0 tests in it, and you know, it was fairly messy. It didn't have any linting, formatting. It had no version of tests or CI/CD. So I definitely understand how overwhelming this can be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'll ping you on Discord, but I'll say that sometime this weekend or starting next week, I'm willing to do a one-on-one, and I'll get that context from you, and I will help give you a better idea of where you should go with this. Definitely at least give you a little bit of guidance and direction. But yeah, I'll give you that that one-on-one for sure.
Dude, that's so awesome of you, Jacob. High five. That's very cool. That's really nice. Hopefully that helps out. One other thing that I should add, when I say that it's too big of a project, I don't mean that that like you will never be able to do it. Well, what you can do when you have a project that's too big is make it smaller. And so it could feel overwhelming because you see this giant elephant in front of you and you're just like, I don't know how to get that elephant in the truck. I don't know. I realized as I was saying it that like the common phrase is you eat an elephant one spoonful at a time, but how awful is that? Like that's gross and like terrible. So never mind that. But you have this big thing. If you can find a way to take little chunks and just say, you know, there's this feature, it's a really small feature. I'm going to get this feature really solid. And then, yeah, try to make the project smaller. And I think you can manage that. Most of the big things that we do, like we launch rockets into space. There's not a single person who does that, but there are like, that's a big project that even giant groups of people couldn't just do all at once. They have to separate it into smaller things that they can that we can make happen. And so try to, because you don't have additional people on your team to help you with this, so it's a big project you have to do yourself, just try to take little pieces at a time. And yeah, like I can understand that yeah, learning or trying to find the right answer for different things is really difficult. I noticed that you're not connected on Epic React or testing JavaScript. Maybe your boss can buy you training material. That's really what they should do. This would be a good thing to, when you talk to your boss, just say, hey, listen, I feel overwhelmed. This project is really big. I'm having a hard time finding the answers to my questions. But they're like, if you can buy me a license to something, then maybe that'll speed me up. So I feel bad like pushing my own stuff when you're here like suffering and I'm telling you to give me money, but yeah, that could help for real. Okay, cool. Good luck. That doesn't sound fun.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think you said thank you. Sorry, it was a little muffled, but yeah. Good luck. All right. Quick question from Matthias. What are your thoughts on 1 hour coding challenges for front-end positions that are algorithms focused? Oh yeah, we had this conversation. Where was it? I think there was a thread in one of these about interviewing styles. I think it may have been Life actually. Do we have threads archived? No, archived. Okay, it was somewhere else. Still learning threads. But yeah, so we talked about this a little bit in a thread. Let me find it. There it is. So I hate them, by the way. Algorithms focus questions and interviews. I think they're terrible. Recently, I lost my chance for a position after failing at one of them. Yeah, their loss and yours. It's the worst. Like we all suffer because of this. It's so stupid. I got rusty a bit on DS. I don't know what DS means. Data structures. There you go. I like solving those competitive programming sort of problems, but not quite sure if they should decide if you're the best fit for a front-end position. I agree. I totally agree, Matthias. So what's interesting is my job interview at both PayPal and Facebook were not data structures and algorithms at all. They were 100% like, hey, we have this problem. How would you solve this problem? And some of it was like architecturally. Facebook actually asked me, let's say that you're building Instagram and you have like all of the, or actually I think it may have been Pinterest. I don't remember, but that you have this grid of pictures that are showing up and you don't know how tall the pictures are. And so as you're scrolling down, like where do you put the new pictures as they come in? And so like we had a long discussion about that, and I mentioned some ideas and they said, oh, but like, what about this? Or, oh, what if the engineers could give you this? And, oh yeah, it was an interesting discussion. And it was kind of fun to talk about it that way. And then I had another one where they're like, you've got this giant array of these things. How do you sort them in this way and make it performant and stuff like that? Like real things that we do on the job. And so I know that Google is not like that. I was invited to interview at Google, and I was, I mean, aside from not wanting to work at Google, when I was a teenager, I wanted to work at Google. That's like what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do because at that time I didn't want to be a programmer. I just really liked Google when I was a teenager. But yeah, now you couldn't pay me enough. I don't want to work at Google or Facebook. But I knew that Google, like they really valued these types of questions, or at least they did. So I was like, no, I do not want to have that subjected to me. When I interviewed at PayPal, my questions when I, as an interviewer and an interviewee, it was all very practical stuff. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I think they're the worst. And my interviewing philosophy, I really like this. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, here it is. This is a great blog post that kind of formed some of the way that I do interviews. It's hard to evaluate a person's abilities in just a few hours and whether or not they're going to do well on the team. But I definitely feel like we can do a lot better than stupid like questions about things that we never do on the job. It's like you're interviewing a lawyer to come into your firm and asking them, how many elephants can fit in a one of those giant dump trucks at mines or whatever. Like, I don't know. I guess I could go look it up on freaking Google.
A little bit of an interview hack too is if you do get asked one of those questions, you can sometimes kind of talk your way out of that question, like by doing something like, "Hey, that's a really interesting problem. Is that something I'm going to come across at work on a daily basis? And if not, like, what's an example of something I might come across at work? And can we go over that?" And I've actually moved interviews away from those whiteboarding CS questions in the past.
That's actually a great point. It could be that the interviewer just doesn't know what else to do, because interviewing is really difficult. And so if they're insecure in their interview abilities, then they could be very easily steered in the direction that you want the interview to go, which is fine. That's great. I thank you for mentioning that. I hadn't actually thought about that, but if I felt really insecure in my interview abilities and I just like had these questions that, I'm following this because that's the paved path. But then, the interviewee takes it a different way. I'd be easy to steer. That's for sure. All right. Darius is asking, somebody asked in the chat, in the Zoom chat. Do you have time to discuss it? What are your thoughts about Svelt? Okay. So, let's see what Darius said first. Svelte isn't strictly better. It has its own set of trade-offs. Many people like. Personally find React's declare update model to be, yep. I 100%, I'm on with Darius. I feel exactly the same way. I personally also really appreciate that React is like, here's where I declare my state and here's where I update it. And that, like, it's just very obvious. I was just burned so hard by Angular's two-way data binding, like so hard. I spent so many hours trying to figure out what thing was updating the state. It was so frustrating. And so, yes, I really like that I can only update the state by calling this function. And anywhere I call that function, the state's going to update. I'm going to get a re-render. That just simplifies things drastically. And then also, I really don't like template syntaxes and stuff like that. I just give me JavaScript. So those are kind of some of my personal feelings on it. As far as like whether or not it's going to replace React in the long term, that will never happen. No way. React is here to stay as long as we're programming UIs with JavaScript. I will die on this hill. It is going to stay. Now, will it be the most popular for as long as we're building UIs? That is more up for debate. But here's the way I think about it. I actually think that computers are going to start writing UIs for us in before React falls out of favor, and probably before React is like stops being the most popular option. I'm pretty sure that React will be the most popular option for as long as we're actually building UIs on the web, and maybe even in native. I mean, React is probably the most popular solution for building JavaScript solution for building native UIs. So yeah, it's probably going to be the last UI framework you need to learn for building UIs on the web, because it will remain the most popular solution until the computers are writing UIs for us. And that's going to happen in the next decade. I mean, I know just about as much about that as anybody else, and that's the way I feel about it. So anyway, if you want to use Svelte, you can absolutely use Svelte. People seem to love it. You will not get as many job opportunities as you will with React. However, you don't need as many job opportunities. You just need one. You just need one, and one really good one, and you'll be happy that you'll be happy with. And so, if you're happy with Svelte and you're happy with the job that you can get with working with Svelte, then go for it. It's great. And smart people love and use Svelte. And I'll also say, one of the things that people really love about Svelte is SvelteKit, because it eliminates so many problems that they don't have to think about. If you are interested and you're like, wow, SvelteKit sounds interesting, go for Remix, because that Remix is basically the React version of SvelteKit, from what I understand about SvelteKit. Can you hear that in the background? No? This microphone's amazing because it's loud. It's like the brrr on the side of my house. So that's good. So yeah, anyway, try Remix. Remix has gotten me so excited about building websites. It's awesome. Okay, can you recommend any articles, books on designing a good good code architecture? Read clean architecture doesn't fit well with React. Yeah, okay. Yeah, architecture. I don't know. You get a big shrug from me. I have technically been an architect. Front-end architect has been my job title. And I don't know. I did listen to a book recently, and I'm looking it up right now, about architecture. It's a pretty popular one. Where is it? Yeah, okay. So I listened to Fundamentals of Software Architecture and Engineering Approach. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's like 13 hours long. And then the Pragmatic Programmer 20th Anniversary Edition, 2nd edition. And yeah, it's like 10 hours long. They were okay. They're good, interesting stuff. I don't know. I'm sorry that I can't be helpful here. And when people say architecture, they're always like, we have to define terms. It's kind of like testing, where you have to define different things. Like, what do you mean by architecture? Are you talking about like where you put files? Or are you talking about like zoom out and let's look at how systems communicate? Like there's two different or lots of different ways to think about it. Yeah, I don't know. Like when we're talking about architecture, React, like real architecture. I'm not talking about like where you put files, but like real architecture. That's like systems level thinking. And React is just a piece of that. You got to think about, you know, the backends that you're using. Are you integrating with third parties? All of this stuff. That is architecture, or the things that you think about when you are doing, or when you are an architect, architecting things together. And React is just a piece of that. And so that's why, you know, it doesn't really fit well with React, because that's like such a small piece of what architecture really is. Now, if you're thinking, okay, if that's not what architecture is, then that's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about like, how do I organize a React project and make sure that it, you know, it scales well with lots of lines of code and users and stuff. Then what I'd suggest is use a meta framework that makes lots of those decisions for you. And I would tell you to use Remix. It tells you where to put files, and it's well laid out so that you have nested routing, and so many of the decisions that you typically have to make in a React project are made for you. And so you just iterate really fast, and they give you all of the right ways to do things. You do have to make some decisions, like what libraries am I going to use for this different interactions and stuff. But that's a different question. And as far as like articles and books on designing that, I don't know anything for that. Dan Abramoff has this fun site that's about like, where do you put files? And it's literally just text that says, I forget where it is. It's on Surge somewhere, but it's just text that says, I move files around until it feels right, or something like that. Like, he doesn't have an opinion. I feel very similar. Actually, you know what? One thing that might be helpful is when to break up components. Whoops, I didn't mean to start a thread. I think that, oh, where'd that go? Yeah, I think about code organization through the lens of collocation. So maybe that will help you as well. I try to just co-locate things. So hopefully I sort of answered your question a little bit. Good luck. Sorry. Also, okay. Is it fine to write test cases in JavaScript for a React TypeScript application? Oh, right. Yeah, I saw this earlier. So yes, it's fine. I mean, you write your code in whatever you're going to write it in. Just remember that I think that tests are just software. They're no different from any other software. It's just software. The entire object of software is to automate things that we can't reasonably do ourselves. That is all that software is. 100% That's what software is. It does things that we can't reasonably do ourselves as humans, or like it makes it so that we're less error prone. We can do things faster. That's what it is. That's all that it is. That's software. So when we're talking about writing automated tests, that's what we're doing. We don't want to manually test it. We want to automatically test it, so we don't have to do it because we can't reasonably test our software ourselves. So we're going to write software, and that software, we just call it tests. And so the decision on should I write my application in JavaScript or TypeScript is the same decision for like, should I write my test in JavaScript or TypeScript? It's like, well, do you get benefit out of using TypeScript? Yes, then use TypeScript. And that's what I say. Everybody just use TypeScript. And I do the same thing with my tests. You get a lot of help in writing your tests. You also get some confidence on your types as well, since you're using your component in these different ways. Maybe not a lot, but a little bit. Yeah, probably not a lot, because like you're probably using those components in other areas, so that's where you're going to get that confidence. But like you'll get autocomplete and stuff like that. It can be a bit annoying when you're working with mocks. You have to do some typecasting and stuff like that. But don't shy away from typecasting in your tests. I mean, you're still better off than just using regular JavaScript. And yeah, TypeScript has totally caught things that I've done wrong in my tests. Like if I refactor or not refactor, but change the API to a component, it's nice to have TypeScript tell me that my tests are broken too, without having to run my tests. So yeah, I'm gonna give you a thumbs up on TypeScript. Here, I'll give you a TypeScript logo as well. There it is. I need to add the TypeScript thing to the onboarding. When you get asked like, what technologies are you interested in? I should add TypeScript to that. I don't know if it is. Maybe it is. I'll have to check. Lots of it is an illusion. Yes, it's true. Okay. Yes. Oh, thank you, Azizbek. I need to add that to my list of like, this is actually the updated version of 0 to 60 in software development. So I should link to that one instead. Yeah, sometimes I forget what I have created. Dude, that's so awesome of you, Jacob. You're the best. Okay, what is a better way to learn from a course? Some people say you should be good in JavaScript and only should learn React, but I only know fundamental part of JavaScript and is CSS important for learning React? How to use React docs while learning or building the project? When should I start to build a project? Okay, great questions. I have a blog post titled JavaScript to Know for React. And you do not have to know these things to be able to start writing React. 100%. Oh, and actually, you know what? Even better. How to React. And actually, I think this one even comes with a conference talk. No? I thought I'd given this as a talk before, but maybe I just proposed it. Yeah, so read these two blog posts. My answer is do whatever the fetch you want. Like you write the code you want to write. I would encourage you to do things that get you excited about programming. And I think the most important thing for you to do as you're learning something new is to stay interested. All right. So whatever you can do to keep yourself interested, to keep you hanging on to that thing that you want to accomplish for as long as possible, long enough for you to get to the point where you can get back to the fundamentals. Fundamentals are often boring. Some people like it, but most people find that part to be kind of boring. And for me, that was my problem. As I started in programming, I almost didn't hang on because my first programming class, I took two programming classes at once. The first one of them, we learned about transistors, and then we learned about machine code, and we wrote a machine code program, zeros and ones. I kid you not. And then we upgraded to assembly, you know, or and like, oh, that was not fun. It wasn't fun. It was not fun. And then we upgraded to C, which also wasn't fun and was really confusing. And then in my Java class, we were building linked lists, and they were talking about how fun it was to write your own compiler. And like, I didn't get it. And at one point we did we did do a drawing program where you could draw circles. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but still useless. And so I almost was like, nah, programming is stupid and boring. I don't like it. It wasn't until I actually started building something that was useful in the real world that I realized, oh, programming is kind of fun. And then I started, I still wasn't convinced I wanted to be a programmer. And so at every company that I went to though, I saw something we were doing manually. And I was like, I think I could probably write a program to do this. And so I automated it with a program. And I just like kind of tricked myself into programming all the time at every internship I had. They were like, here, we're going to hire you to do this thing. And I'm like, I'll program my way out of this. And then I got hired to this other place to do this other thing. We're going to do business intelligence. And oh, we actually have these reports we need to email. I'm like, I think I can write a program to automate that. So I did. And like every job, I just programmed instead of my actual job. And that's when I realized, okay, I guess I'm going to be a programmer. But it all came down to me being excited because I was building useful things. I was doing things that I found to be actually useful. And so that's what the only thing that I encourage you to do is to stay interested. Do whatever you need to do to stay interested. And anybody who tells you that you need to learn CSS or HTML before you learn, or JavaScript before you learn React or whatever. I mean, yeah, if you want to build a like full big application that is secure and is awesome and performant and all that stuff, yeah, you're going to need to know those things. But as you're learning and just like tinkering around and building fun things, heck no, like build whatever you want and do it the way you want. And just all that matters is that you stay interested. If what you really want is to become a programmer, all that matters is that you stay interested, because over time you will learn, you'll fill in those gaps. And the other thing I would say is when you feel pretty comfortable with wherever you're at, and you're like, I just want to level up. I know that I'm not where I need to be. I just need to level up. That's when you go back to the fundamentals and you do the boring stuff, and you already have the motivation that you need to do that boring stuff, because you know how fun it is and how awesome it is, and you're going to endure the pain. And like I said, some people really like the fundamentals, lots of people don't. So you'll endure that pain of going through the fundamentals because you know the prize is I'm going to level up. And actually, once you have that base experience, the fundamentals actually become more interesting to you, because the reason that it was really hard for me to be excited about programming at first is because I couldn't see the applicability. But if I had first struggled a lot with like getting an array of data to work well together or something, then yeah, maybe learning how to create a linked list data structure would have been really interesting to me, because I'm like, oh yeah, I've experienced this problem before, and now like I have this solution, and it's great. But it's not until you have the like real problem that you're trying to solve that becomes interesting. And so, yeah, anyway, that's my long spiel on that. I should probably write a blog post about this, because I have thoughts about this. So hopefully that helps. Good luck. Stay interested. It's fun. I'm going to make a note of that. This is actually, sometimes I sit down and I'm like, I need to write a blog post, and I can't think of what I want to write about. And normally when that happens, whatever comes out doesn't end up being very good. Because I'm like, normally my best pieces of writing are things that I'm like actively thinking about, I'm interested and excited about. And if I have to look at a list and say, okay, what should I write about? And normally I'm not like actively thinking and excited about it. But sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I wanted to write about that. So I'm going to make a note. How to start learning. Should I learn JavaScript, HTML, and CSS before React? Okay. Yeah, that, and I kind of wrote about that a little bit in how to react in that blog post, but I think I've got more thoughts on that, so I may write about that later. Okay, sweet. Oh, yep. And Syntax FM, they have been talking about Svelt recently. Scott is really into SvelteKit. I think that if he tried Remix, he might be also quite impressed, because they sound very similar. And I know that Wes has been trying Svelte as well and is pretty impressed too, which is cool. Yeah, there it is. React file structure.search.sh. This is Dan's move files around until it feels right. This is not a joke. Link to a tweet. That's fun. Okay. Super simple start to a React. Yep, that's another really good one. Thank you, Peter, for that. Okay. M0ster, monster. Hey, Ken, I spent a couple of years doing both AngularJS and Angular around 2017, 2019. But since then, I've been using React almost exclusively. I recently gotten very generous job offer doing React again. Curious about of your opinions on whether you think Angular has a place in the future. It seems it's slowly fading out. Would I be doing myself an injustice to take this opportunity and perhaps spend the next few years away from React and focus on Angular? All right, so as soon as I left Angular, the AngularJS community, I continued to get emails and opportunities on LinkedIn and stuff because I had AngularJS experience on my LinkedIn. I think I've since actually removed that. Let me find it, my LinkedIn thing. Angular. No, I still have it on there. I guess they just stopped coming, or I stopped or started ignoring them. Oh, you know what I did? Oh, yeah. Now I just said I'm not interested in engaging. But for a while there, at the top of my bio, I said I'm not interested in Angular because I would get lots of people asking me to come do Angular stuff. Now I'm just not interested in engaging at all. I'm not even signed in, and I'm pretty sure I've got like just tons of messages and stuff. Sorry, I don't do LinkedIn. So yeah, I didn't want to say this earlier, but that I should have. My perception also is that Angular is fading out. I think it's getting less popular over time. I mean, relative to everything else. Maybe it's growing just at a slower rate or something. It just does. I have tons of friends from the Angular community. They're still active in there. So I know that stuff is still going on, but yeah, I don't think it's growing. So, I mean, if it's a great job and you love the company, the technology doesn't matter nearly as much as the people that you work with. So if you're really excited about working at that company, then maybe, I mean, Angular requires you to learn a lot about Angular and not, and you kind of give up some transferable skills. You'll learn a lot about RxJS. It sounds like you've already done Angular quite a bit before, so maybe you know all this stuff already. But RxJS doesn't really have a place outside of the Angular community. Mostly, like there are people who use it, but the Angular community is by far and away the community that uses RxJS. Any company that or any place that uses RxJS in like React projects, nobody can work in those code bases except RxJS programmers. I know that, like, I have really good friends who are really smart. They use RxJS and love it and think it's just the bee's knees. And they always say, like, once you learn it, it unlocks so many awesome things for you. But yeah, I've tried to learn it like 4 times, and I just get so stuck. It's so confusing to me. And Peter, yes, good point there. And actually, earlier I referenced this article, Business and Engineering Alignment, and in there I talk a lot about the mission of the company. It's way easier to align the business with what you want if what you want is the success of the business. And so, so yeah, if you're super excited about the business itself, then I would say take it. I mean, sorry, I don't like giving advice because it's impossible for you to give me enough context to give you advice. But yeah, like that's a major factor. Does it spark joy? Just like Peter said. So yeah, I don't know. You could not get me to work in Angular again. That just won't ever happen from where I'm sitting. And I agree. I think that it is kind of fading out. So I wouldn't do it if I were you. But no, you do what you want to do. Good luck. Can you hear that? You can't hear that. Right there? Kind of. Okay, yeah. I was like, that's loud. Okay, we're almost done. Just about finished. We're getting a comment here. And Justin, I noticed you unmuted yourself. Did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I had another quick one if you have a sec. I find myself, when I see a design, I draw the mental boxes around all the things that could be components, like that image you had up earlier. But I've also read the how to or when to break things up into other components posts like 12 times. So I've got that in the back of my mind too. And I find I initially draw like 20 components or whatever when I see the design, and it ends up being, I don't run into any of those problems. So it ends up being like 2 components in one file and I'm done. Do you find yourself doing that too?
Yes, totally. So it's very easy to draw those lines around everything. And I always try to start with one component, and I just make it as big as I can. And honestly, like, I may not end up shipping it that way, but I find it to be a real time saver to just put everything in one component and then break it out when I'm done. So sometimes it's just like, oh, this is so obviously like it's special thing. It needs its own state or whatever. But most of the time, yeah, just like put that state at the top of the file, throw it in there, mix it all up. And then when you're all done, then you can look at it from like, okay, it's done perspective and see very obvious places where to split it up. But yeah, like especially if what you're building isn't like a bunch of reusable stuff, then yeah, I end up with just like 1 or 2 components as well. Another thing to keep in mind, if I can, let's see, where, somewhere in here in my history, gee whiz, I could open a million things. That image, we can all remember it, right? It's that GitHub boxes around everything. With Remix, that's nested layouts. So like layout components in Remix are awesome because it's literally just the component that you export, and then you get this output component, and then you stick the output, or is that what it's called? Yeah, outlet. So you get this outlet component, you stick the outlet component where the rest of the like page should be based on the route, and then that's a different file, and you go and you say this is what should be in there. And so yeah, with Remix, you end up not really having layout components because they're just like your routes. Yeah. The only situation where you'd have a layout component is if you had 2 completely separate routes, where you wanted like some of the same. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess you could have like, let's say that you had, let's say I had right here, I wanted to just be blank, nothing on here, because I have, page 1 and page 2. They should look basically the same, have the same layout, but then page 3 has a completely different layout. In that situation, in a Remix context, then you would need to make a layout component that could be used for page 1 and 2, and then you'd have a totally different sort of thing for page 3. And so in that situation, yeah, layout component would be quite useful because they're reusable bits, right, that need to be shared between the 2. And then, yeah, but even then, like, unless it's each one of the bits in that layout are also reusable and they're used in other places, that could still be a single component that just renders its children in one place. So yeah, I don't know. I agree with you, Justin. I think lots of the times you don't need a ton of components that you like. I don't have for example, like just on this page, this is, you could draw lines around each one of these things. They're not really individual components. I mean, this is a link component, right? Because it's, we're client side transitions and stuff. But like outside of that, I render this whole nav by itself. This, this whole thing is a component. I don't have like individual components for each one of these. I think I actually do have individual components for these. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I just kind of break things up when it makes sense, but I try to keep things all in one place because you automatically make things more complex when you break it up. That just, there is a complexity fixed cost by breaking things up. It just, especially if you're doing TypeScript, because now not only do you need to think about the props that are going to be passed, but also the types of those props. That's really annoying, actually, because now what was before just like a property on an object that was already typed, you now have to extract that somehow or reference it in your typings for the component. And so, yeah, it's just annoying. It adds complexity. There's a fixed cost. You can't avoid it. And so I try to just push things together unless there's some other thing that necessitates, some other benefit I could get that makes up for the cost. So anyway, there's a lot of words.
Totally. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. So I think, yeah, we've got another question from Gobinath. Hopefully I said your name right, or Gobinath. I think it's Gobinath. What type of projects one should build to make a beautiful portfolio to get hired? Which one should start first? And what should be his planning, either focus on design or functionality? Should I build the project purely on front end or integrate some backend stuff because use Firebase? But most people tell it to integrate with the real backend. What about RESTful API? Should beginner build that one too? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about each one of these questions one by one. What type of project to build a portfolio? Yeah, I don't know. When I was at PayPal and I was interviewing people, I'd always like look into their GitHub and their website and stuff like that. And I could definitely be. It's way easier to be wowed by visual UI things, even if you're hiring for a backend position. Having something visually interesting, it gives you a much better impression of the engineer than not. And so I would probably, I would say I would be more impressed by somebody who focused on design over functionality. So that's one thing. Now, it's cool to have both. Like that's great. But yeah, first impressions and all of that, definitely more interested in the design. And I would say that's a logical fallacy that we just all suffer from. If I'm hiring for, in fact, I apply the same thing to like restaurants and stuff. If I'm like, I want a burger and I look at the restaurants for 2 burger places, I will go to the one with the nicer website. That has nothing to do with the tastiness of their burger. So like, I don't think I'm unique in that. So anyway, yeah. Should I build a project purely on front end or integrate some back end stuff? I mean, most portfolios are just front end stuff. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You don't need user accounts on your website. Now, I'm building user accounts on my website, but I'm doing a lot of other really interesting and fun things. I'm at the point in my career where I can take a big break from content creation and stuff. And I like, I have a passive income stream. And so like I can take this big, long break and even pay people to help me. Thank you, Stephen, if you're watching this, to actually go through and build a website that has all these really interesting and fun things. If you're just trying to get hired, those interesting and fun things will maybe not even be noticed by the people that are trying to hire you. So keep that into consideration. So I probably wouldn't bother doing any backend things. Unless some of those are going to be like the wow factor that you're really going to highlight on your site, people won't miss it, whatever. But yeah, probably, I mean, maybe you could build a chat that like instantly sends you a text message and be like, say hi to me right here. And then it sends you a message and you can reply and like actually conversate, I guess. But like, even if I was hiring somebody and it had this little chat here thing, I probably wouldn't use it. Like I might look at it and be like, oh, that's kind of interesting that they did that. But I think you have a limited time that you can invest in this project, right? Even if you spend all of your time doing it, you're still limited by just the time that we have as people. And so I would focus my time on the design first. Yeah, okay. And as far as like whether to use Firebase or a real backend, Firebase is totally a real backend. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It absolutely is a real backend. And many, many people build real things on that real backend of Firebase. With the limited time that you have and the focus that you have on front end, if that's your focus, I guess it comes down to what do you want to focus on? I would recommend focusing either on front end or back end. Don't try and do both as you're learning. Yeah, so yeah, I would say just if you wanted to use a backend, just use Firebase, unless the backend stuff is what you want to learn. Yeah, what about a RESTful API? Yeah, I mean, if what you want to learn is the backend, then yeah, you could build a RESTful API for something. that could be interesting for like a side project that you could feature on your portfolio. Hopefully that helps. Good luck. Okay, and Nemo came in here with another question. Hey, Kent, have you seen this project? It's, I don't think so. It basically runs TypeScript compiler over your code samples. Very useful for TypeScript related blog post courses where you could show type errors. Oh, you know what? I think I have seen this. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think I have seen this. I don't write enough of these. Yeah, I don't make enough of these to use this project. Yeah, like I could probably install this, I guess. This is very confusing. How do I install this thing? I mean, it's very interesting. Holy cow, this thing's huge. Yeah, really cool. Here we go. There's probably installation instructions in here. Yeah, like that's really cool. If I ever wanted to do this, then I would look into this project. But yeah, I mean, maybe when I start into writing more TypeScript stuff, then I'll want to like show TypeScript errors. So I'll keep this in the back of my pocket. We'll see if we use that in the future. Yeah, and TypeScript docs, yeah, of course, that's a perfect place for this to be used. And that makes sense why that would exist. So, okay, I think we are well over our hour. We're almost to 2 hours now. So it's been fun. It's been real fun, but I'm really hungry. I'm gonna go get lunch. So thanks for hanging out. Yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day. I've got office hours next week. I don't think I've got a cancellation. Actually, I do. Yeah, next week. No way. No way. Hold on a second. Where did that go? Oh, everything's in my way. There it is. Yeah, next week. It's my niece's wedding. My niece is getting married. So that's fun. I'm actually a great uncle 3 times. I have a niece and a nephew who are married and have kids. That's kind of crazy. Actually, fun fact, my oldest niece went to university at the same time I was in university. I was in my last year. She was in her first. And so we went to school together. I went to school with my niece. It's kind of cool. Yeah, so my other niece getting married August 6th. So I am not going to be here. So sorry. We'll see you the following week. And yeah, I guess we had like a 2-hour office hours today. So sort of made up for that. Hope that you and Nemo, sorry, I kind of was dismissive, but thank you for sharing this, because I may actually end up using this. It's pretty cool. And I am actually using Shiki as well in my new blog. So that might integrate really perfectly. All right, that's enough for me. Thanks, everybody. It's been fun. It's been real. It's been real fun. We'll see you in the future.